Hello sports fans, welcome to Super Sports Central. Today, we're going to be going over my Week 4 UFL power rankings. Starting off, briefly recapping Week 3, the Stallions beat the Renegades 10-9, the Roughnecks beat the Showboats 18-17, the Panthers defeated the Brahmas 26-23, and the Defenders knocked off the Battlehawks, winning 27-15. But getting into my rankings, beginning things at number 8, I've got the Showboats. So the Showboats, they fall to number 8, after they lost to the previously winless Roughnecks by a score of 18-17. The Showboats, they had a chance to win it, as they scored a touchdown with 13 seconds left, but couldn't get the 2-point conversion, and they ended up falling short. The Showboats' offense wasn't great, as they scored just 17 points, and once again have a quarterback controversy. They came into the game with E.J. Purry as the starting quarterback, and he played all of last week's game against DC, but Purry was not very good. He threw 2 interceptions on back-to-back drives, with one of them being a pick 6, and the Showboats then benched E.J. Purry for Troy Williams. But Purry finished the game with 131 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, and Williams had 63 yards and 35 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Then, speaking of the run game for the Showboats, it was non-existent, as they had 72 rushing yards and a touchdown, but averages 2.6 yards per carry. Then, the Showboats' defense wasn't great, but also wasn't terrible. They allowed 18 points, but really was only 12 when you factor in the pick 6. And the defense, they put the team in a position to win, but the offense couldn't get it done. I still think this is a Showboats team with a lot of potential, especially if they can figure out the quarterback position and stop turning the ball over. But Showboats, they're currently 0-3, and after losing to the previously winless Roughnecks, I've got them at number 8. Coming in at number 7, I've got the Brahmas. So the Brahmas enter at number 7 after they lost to the Panthers 26-23. But the Brahmas, despite the loss, they played by far their best game this season. They had a chance to send this game to overtime, although kicker D. Stroing missed a 53-yard field goal that would have tied it, although he did make from 55 earlier in the game. The Brahmas' offense was pretty good, and even though I don't think offensive coordinator A.J. Smith was the problem, their first week without him, they scored a season-high 23 points. Quarterback Kellen Mond still wasn't the best, but he definitely looked better, as he finished the game with 152 yards and a touchdown, and the Brahmas need to get running back Anthony McFarland more involved. He had 9 touches for 75 yards and a touchdown this week, and that was already an increased role from what we've seen in the first 2 weeks, but I think he should be utilized even more with how big of a difference maker he is with his speed. Now, the Brahmas' defense wasn't good once again, and they've now allowed at least 26 points in all 3 of their games, but the defense did come up with a huge pick 6 that tied the game at 23, other than the defense couldn't keep the Panthers at a field goal range. But the Brahmas, they definitely showed lots of improvement from the first 2 weeks to this week, and they still have got potential, but I've got them at number 7, and you can definitely argue the Brahmas and Showboats either way, 7 and 8, but I've got Showboats 8, Brahmas 7. Coming in at number 6, I've got the Roughnecks. So the Roughnecks, they move up for the first time this season, as I now have them ranked number 6, after they got their first win of the season, after they beat the Showboats 18-17. The Roughnecks used a big second half to get the win, and it was because of backup quarterback Nolan Henderson. The Roughnecks, they started Anthony Brown, but he continued to just look terrible, with just 40 passing yards in the first half. So the Roughnecks made the quarterback switch at halftime, and Nolan Henderson was great. He completed 10 of his 11 passes for 80 yards and a touchdown, and also had 15 rushing yards. And I really liked the way Nolan Henderson played, and for once, head coach C.J. Johnson actually made a good decision, announcing Henderson as the team's starting quarterback moving forward. The Roughnecks, they also had a good performance on the ground, with 118 yards on 25 carries, and the defense had a good game, getting a big stop on a 2-point conversion to seal the win, as well as forcing 3 turnovers and returning 1 of them for a score. But the Roughnecks, they looked pretty good in the win. I'm excited to see what the offense looks like moving forward now that Nolan Henderson is their starting quarterback. But after the first win of the season, I've got the Roughnecks at number 6. Coming in at number 5, I've got the Panthers. The Panthers enter at number 5 after they beat the Brahmas 26-23, and the Panthers' offense, they played well. They put up a season-high 26 points, and once again, we saw why Bryce Perkins should be their starting quarterback. The Panthers, they started Danny Etling despite listing Bryce Perkins as their starter on the depth chart, but unfortunately Danny Etling got hurt a few plays into the game, so Bryce Perkins took over, and he was great. He threw for 193 yards and an interception, but he also had 30 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. And using Perkins as a runner is something I wanted to see the Panthers do more, and obviously it worked out, so keep doing it. But the Panthers, they ran the ball very effectively, rushing for 115 yards and 3 touchdowns on 4.3 yards a carry, although their defense wasn't the best, allowing 23 points. But this was still a solid win for the Panthers, and I've got them at number 5. Fourth, I've got the Renegades. The Renegades come in at number 4 after they lost their first game of the season, losing a 10-9 slugfest to the Stallions. The Renegades' offense was not good for the second straight week. They were held to 11 points in week 2, and now 9 points this past week. The Renegades, they did move the ball, as quarterback Luis Perez threw for 208 yards, and they ran for 74 yards, but they just couldn't get in the end zone. They were over 4 in the red zone, settling for 3 field goals and losing a fumble, and the offense was not good. Now, the Renegades' defense was good, allowing just 10 points, but for the second straight week, they allowed a touchdown with under 2 minutes left, and this time it cost them the game. As the Renegades, they blew a coverage late in the game, and Matt Corral found K. Johnson for a touchdown, but that was one of the few times the Stallions had an open receiver. But I definitely think the Renegades' defense played very well, especially their secondary, but the Renegades, their offense was not good for the second straight week, and they need to definitely fix that moving forward, but I've got the Renegades at number 4. Coming in at number 3, I've got the Stallions. So the Stallions move up to number 3 after a comeback win over the Renegades, winning 10-9. The Stallions, they scored a game-tying touchdown and got the game-winning conversion with 26 seconds left, but this win for the Stallions didn't come without controversy, as the Renegades had seemingly gotten a game-sealing interception on 4th and 6, but the play was reviewed and there was a missed false start, so replay added the penalty, giving the Stallions another chance to convert the 4th down, which they did, and later that drive scored a game-winning touchdown. Now, I know there's some people who don't like the rule that replay can go at a penalty, and also that the Renegades weren't given the option to decline it, but I really like the rule. I understand it's frustrating for the Renegades, but I like the rule and I want the calls to be right. And if there was a missed penalty, I think replay should be able to go back and add that. And the reason the Renegades weren't allowed to decline the penalty is technically the play never happened because it was technically a pre-snap foul. But I like the rule. Let me know what you guys think of that rule in the comments. But getting back to what the Stallions actually did. The Stallions' offense did not play well, and they were terrible until the final 2 minutes. They started awful, turning the ball over 2 times in their first 2 drives, and they just couldn't get anything going. Quarterback Matt Corral did not play well at all, but he was great on their game-winning touchdown drive, and because he led them on a game-winning drive, I do think he should be the Stallions starter moving forward. Although, the Stallions will definitely need Corral to be a lot better moving forward. But Corral, he finished the game with a pretty solid stat line, throwing for 255 yards, a touchdown, and interception, although he was pretty inaccurate for most of the game. The Stallions also could not run the ball, which is 52 rushing yards and 2.9 yards per carry. Then the Stallions' defense was great, and the defensive front dominated with 3 sacks, and they were great against the run with 7 tackles for loss. But the Stallions, they got the win. It wasn't pretty, but I've got them moving up to number 3, and they're now 2-1 on the season. Coming in at number 2, I've got the Battlehawks. So the Battlehawks fall to number 2 after they lost to Defenders 27-15. The Battlehawks offense was not good, which is 15 points, and quarterback Manny Wilkins really struggled as he turned the ball over 4 times. He threw 3 picks and lost a fumble. Now, Wilkins wasn't helped out by being under constant pressure, but a couple of his interceptions were either bad decisions or bad throws. But the Battlehawks, they also had no run game, which is 45 rushing yards and 2.8 yards per carry. And even though the Battlehawks couldn't run the ball, running back Jacob Sauer still had a nice game with 7 catches for 91 yards. Then defensively for the Battlehawks, they didn't play their best game, allowing 27 points and nearly 350 yards of offense. But the Battlehawks, they're still an extremely good team. They did not play well, and it was still a fairly close game for the majority of the game, but I've got the Battlehawks falling to number 2. And coming in at number 1, it is the only undefeated team in the league, the Defenders. So the Defenders move up to number 1 after they knocked off the Battlehawks, winning 27-15. The Defenders' offense was good, but it was really the defense that dominated this game. They held the Battlehawks to just 15 points and 173 total yards, while also forcing 4 turnovers and absolutely dominating the line of scrimmage. Then offensively for the Defenders, they were also good, although quarterback Jordan Tayamu is extremely inconsistent, as he ended up playing a pretty good game with 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, but also had 2 interceptions, and he missed some big throws. And I'm still not sure what to make of Jordan Tayamu because he will drop an absolute dime, but for every great throw, there's about 5 awful throws. But I will give Jordan Tayamu credit. He played well and was a big part of the Defenders' win. The Defenders were also good on the ground with 103 yards, and receiver Ty Scott had a big game with 3 catches for 85 yards and a big 62-yard touchdown, although Scott has now been placed on IR with a broken arm. But a big win for the Defenders. They're now the only undefeated team in the UFL at 3-0, and I've got the defenders at number 1. But that's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, turn notifications. I do my best to post as often as possible, and I will see you next video.